Security Council in Ivory Coast has denounced in strong terms unacceptable blackmail of the Malian transitional authorities for demanding extradition of certain Malian personalities in exile in Ivory Coast in exchange for the release of Ivorian soldiers. Plus, in Cameroon, landowners in Kambele, a mineral-rich eastern region in Cameroon, are in conflict with Chinese mining companies over land grabbing issues. But what is the government doing to put the situation under control? Find out in this edition of the news. And those are my big stories of tonight. Good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. I am Teke Wana at the anchor. We begin this day throwing our news tentacles from Central African Republic, where newly appointed officials to decide the constitution of the country have been installed into their office by President Archange Touadera. What is their mission? Photo tells us more in this report.
The drafting committee of the new constitution is composed of 55 personalities to reflect Central African society. They have 3 months to propose a new fundamental text adapted to Central African realities. In his remarks, Professor Touadera declared before the deputies, the government and the representative of institutions to comply with the demands of the people and consider that no institution had the power to stand up to sovereignty popular. Faithful to his Republican commitment, the letter cannot remain insensitive to the pressing demand of his people to adopt a new fundamental law declared Faustin Archange Touadera. The Constitution of March 30, 2016 confers neither the President of the Republic nor on any other institution the power to stand up the popular sovereignty, to limit or prevent the exercise of this sovereignty. He also noted that the majority of these compatriots believe that the legal corpus should not be immutable, it must adapt. The Central African president also said he was delighted with the inclusive nature of the drafting committee of the new constitution, called upon to offer the Central African people a new foundation of the state, a supreme norm, a source of legitimacy, a new organization of public authorities, reflecting our habits, custom, the evolution of our society and of the world.
Let's now make a stop in Kenya, where fuel prices in Kenya surged to record price high since this Thursday morning after the new government slashed subsidies, piling on misery for a population already battling with deep economic hardship. As you tell us, Ewane Epole.
The energy regulator on Wednesday, 14 September 2022, said late in the night that the subsidies had been removed for super petrol and that a smaller subsidy has been retained for diesel and equally for kerosene. In the new prices, super petrol, mostly used by private motorists, will now cost about 179 shillings per litre, up from $1.3, while diesel, which is used by transporters and industries, will cost about $1.4 in the capital, Nairobi. Kerosene, which is mainly used by low-income households for cooking and lighting, will cost about $1.2 per litre. This increase comes after President William Ruto, in his inauguration speech on Tuesday, September 13th, referred to fuel and food subsidies as being costly and ineffective. As a reminder, Ruto affirmed on Sunday that Kenya was in a debt economic hole and mentioned repeatedly his promise to lower the cost of living, which for him is a priority upon taking office. The East African political and economic powerhouse is reeling from a once-in-a-generation drought, and inflation is at 5 years high. In June, the World Bank projected Kenya's GDP will grow by 5.5% in 2022, a moderation following last year's recovery when the country's economy grew by 7.5%.
The Joe Biden administration has recently decided to withhold $130 million of its foreign military aid to Egypt over the country's failure to fulfill human rights conditions. As in the report that comes up, Njix Nabise tells us that Egypt is one of those countries where there is plenty of human rights excesses, and this decision may equally implicate other nations in the African continent, as such as Libya. Her report.
The Biden administration has decided to withhold $130 million of foreign military aid to Egypt over its failure to fulfill human rights conditions, U.S. officials said on Wednesday, will allow some funds to go through due to its determination that Cairo has made progress on political detentions. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken expressed that Cairo, by releasing hundreds of jailed individuals, had made some progress on political detentions and due process. Several rights groups have pushed for withholding of all of a $300 million portion of aid to the Northern African country placed under conditions by the U.S. Congress. The rights groups have cited widespread human rights abuses under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's government, including torture and enforced disappearances. The aid that Blinken has decided to withhold accounts for 10% of the $1.3 billion allocated for Egypt annually. Washington is allowing $75 million to be released to Egypt, citing progress related to political detention and due process, including the release of about 500 political detainees this year. Cairo will release another $95 million under the stationary exception related to counterterrorism, border security, and non-proliferation funding, State Department officials said. President al-Sisi had denied there are political prisoners in Egypt, adding the stability and security are paramount and authorities are promoting rights by trying to provide basic needs such as jobs and housing.
Yemenian Airways was found guilty of involuntary homicide over the 2009 crash off the Comoros Islands, which killed 152 passengers on board. A French court ordered the Yemenian airline to pay a $213 fine to the families of 65 French citizens and the flight lone survivor. As you tell us, Ewane Epole.
As penalty for the guilt of the involuntary homicide which killed over 152 people, a French court ordered the Yemenia airline to pay a $230,000 fine to the families of 65 French citizens who died and the flight's lone survivor. This decision was welcomed by Bakari.
It's not a burden because it's something that I carry with me every day, and the court's decision is not going to change my story. It's something that has impacted me, that will impact me all my life. It's just a relief because I never said openly that I thought the company was guilty. I was waiting for the court's decision. For me, today's verdict is just a relief.
The company had been charged with manslaughter and unintentional injuries, but denied responsibility.
We have taken note of the court's decision, who said Yemenia Airways was guilty of recklessness. That's the term used by the tribunal. We will not comment this decision today. What I can tell you is that an appeal will be filed and we will carefully examine today's decision.
The prosecutors said that the aircraft did not have functional landing light, but however, officials from Yemenia previously said that the plane had undergone a thorough inspection and conformed to international standards. Till now, clarifications have not been made about what the current findings of the French court were with respect of the cause of the crash, as the AFP news agency reports that experts told the court there was nothing wrong with the aircraft. The airline in 2018 signed a confidential agreement with 835 beneficiaries who had to wait several more years to receive compensations.
After the release of 3 female Ivorian soldiers who were detained in Bamako some time ago in the month of July 2022, Ivorian officials are calling on West Africa political bloc to help release 46 soldiers still in detention. Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara has promised help if Bamako fails to respect the terms of the diplomatic tug-of-war. Jakes Nabise tells us more.
Ivory Coast has called on West Africa's political bloc ECOWAS to help release 46 soldiers detained by Mali's military government, a government spokesperson said on Wednesday, after a Togolese-led mediation effort appeared to have failed. Mali detained the soldiers in its capital Bamako on July 10 after accusing them of being mercenaries who flew in without permission. According to Ivory Coast, they were part of a security and logistic contingent working under the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali. The government has made repeated pleas for their release, all to no avail. In a televised statement on Wednesday, government spokesperson Amadou Coulibaly called for an extraordinary meeting of the Economic Community of West African States (ECOWAS) to resolve the issue. Mali's military, which took over power for a course of 2 coups in 2020 and 2021, is yet to comment after releasing 3 female Ivorian soldiers over a week ago. Mali's interim president Colonel Assimi Goïta this month accused Ivory Coast of providing asylum to political figures wanted by his government and called for a mutually beneficial solution to the rule. Former colonial power France pulled troops out last month, ending a 10-year mission after a protracted row about airspace, troop movement and Mali's decision to ally with Russian mercenaries from the Kremlin-linked Wagner Group, hundreds of which are now working alongside Mali's army. ECOWAS imposed strict sanctions on Mali this year, weakening its fragile economy. It's worth noting that it lifted them up in July after rulers agreed for a 20-month transition to civilian rule.
Let's make a stop in Cameroon, where locals in Kambele, Cameroon, in its mineral-rich eastern region, have expressed frustration over the maintained seal lip by authorities over land issues against Chinese mining companies, a situation we are told has led to conflicts between landowners and mining companies of Chinese. Details in this report. In Cameroon's mineral-rich eastern region, the sight of artisanal gold miners getting expelled from mines by the military is getting more and more common. In a town like Kembele, for example, landowners are in conflict with Chinese mining companies.
Even before I was born, villagers here were involved in artisanal gold mining. But things have taken another turn with the Chinese. Since they've arrived, we no longer have the possibility to work in our own fields. Firstly, because we've been expropriated, and secondly, no one in the village has the right to benefit from the Chinese economic fallout. Once there were big trees here. It was all a dense forest. Today it has become more like a savanna.
In the town located over 400 kilometers east of Yaoundé, residents also look at the past with envy. They regret how cohabitation with the mining companies has turned out to inflict more pain and frustration than blessing.
We no longer have the possibility to operate freely on our lands. Today we are practically slaves of the Chinese, who make our lives harder. We no longer have the possibility to do things as we want in the same way we were used to.
A local NGO called FODA has taken it upon themselves to report the case of alleged land grabbing by the Chinese mining firm, but however decry the maintained seal lip of government authorities.
Some community leaders have sometimes been imprisoned simply because they wanted to secure their living space, the land. So it is to say that these Chinese companies are settling in these localities in a bit of an anarchic way. But one of the things that worsens the situation is the absence of a land use plan.
The problem continues to worsen each passing day as inhabitants wait helplessly from a grieving point for the Cameroonian government intervention and clear the air on land use regulations before their entire community become transformed into a Chinese community. And that's the package we could gather for you all, ladies and gentlemen. God willing, we shall be back again same time tomorrow. Until then, God bless Africa.